that there's the risk of somebody coming into that public space and launching some sort of attack. It raises the issue of whether officers on duty at places like this, maybe not generally, but at places like this, which are high-profile potential targets, should be armed.
And the officers in question here were from the Westminster Borough. They were not armed, but CS gas was used in the detention. 3 of those officers were injured, albeit minor injuries. But yes, that does raise that question again, which comes of a further arming of the police.
Yeah, it does. The officers, as I understand, were from the local borough, and so just had the usual protective equipment, baton, CS spray, handcuffs. I don't think they even had taser, which is now rolled out in many of the boroughs to many of the patrolling officers. Obviously there are armed officers and officers with taser in the palace itself, but this was just outside. It's ordinary space. It just happens to be outside the palace, outside the target. So, like I say, it does beg the question of whether we need to think about taking that step on the road, the next step on the road to full arming. I don't think we need to go to full arming straight away personally, that's my personal judgment, but we need to think about the availability of armed officers.
The Met Police say they have increased the police presence around Buckingham Palace following this attempted attack last night. I've been here since 5 o'clock this morning and barely seen a police officer. Now, that doesn't mean that they aren't around. Just how do they go about policing a site such as this?
Well, the officers inside the palace are within the walls, within the gates. You'll see them moving around from time to time, but most of them aren't visible from outside. Outside, there's little more than the ordinary patrolling. If they say they've moved extra officers here, they've moved them from somewhere else, because the one thing this government hasn't done is provide extra police officers. In fact, it's provided 20,000 fewer than there were 7 years ago. So there's a big issue there about the availability of police officers generally. If you need police officers on the street, and I believe we do, then you need to employ police officers in the first place.
Peter, thanks very much for joining us here at Sky News. As I say, that 26-year-old man who was arrested remains in a central London police station. He's been questioned under the Terrorism Act.
Dan Whitehead.